Welp, another tournament qualifier is almost in the books. We are 1 week away from the Summer Showdown, and so much has yet to be decided. The top of the order is pretty set in stone for the most part, but there's a lot of spots up for grabs still. A lot of teams could really use the potential bonus points that come with doing well, so many of them have everything to gain and pretty much everything to lose. Teams like Chengdu and even Vancouver are trying to get hot and claw their way back up. It's exciting stuff. There's a lot to break down between previews and predictions, so let's get right into it. Starting us off is the Guangzhou Charge and the Chengdu Hunters. Okay, this might be a little tough, just because the Charge are coming off another upset where their big playmakers have continued to shine through. They're gelling together a lot faster than anticipated. The Charge are kind of this oddball at the moment, as they kind of find themselves at the Hunters level of 2-2. And while Chengdu are obviously going to be favored in this contest, it's not like they've beaten any major opponents so far. I'd say both the Charge and the Hunters have taken advantage of these less coordinated, struggling rosters. The only difference is, Chengdu's execution in their wins has been noticeably better. And it's this deciding factor that makes me think the Hunters will win 3-1. They've got more of that consistency that you're looking for at this point in time, and while I feel these teams are even in a lot of areas, Chengdu have one thing going for them that'll make the difference in the long run. And that, my friends, would be leave. Jimmy has been pretty good so far, but obviously you're going to trust in last year's MVP to continue popping off at a high level on the Sojourn. And if these two are that even across the board, one difference such as this one could be the decision maker. And with Chengdu's superior synergy to lead the way, that'll be enough to get it done. Next is the Valiant versus the Dragons. This is as straightforward as it gets. The Valiant have arguably been the worst team in the East during the Summer Showdown so far. They're the only team without a win, and that chemistry factor is still lacking. The teams that know what they're doing have proven to roll right through them. And since they're playing the Dragons, you'd expect a similar result. Shanghai should be getting the easy 3-0. They've seen little resistance so far, as their chemistry has come through time and time again. Lee Jae-gun and Izayaki have that Brig Lucio down a lot better than their opponents, so I think that if the Valiant wanted any sort of chance, I think Sashin and NYXL would have to step up big time, and with their current level of play, I don't see it happening. Moving on to some NA action, the reigning Gladiators start us off with key match number 1. Considering the average play from both sides this stage, calling this a marquee matchup may not feel that right on the surface, but in fact, this match should be a huge decision maker in who flies out to Canada. A win for Atlanta likely clinches a tournament berth, and a win for the Glad suddenly gives them hope even after starting off 0-4. This game has a lot of significance behind it, and to be honest with you, I think it's going to be close. The Glads are implementing a new strategy with space in the lineup, and it seems like it's doing alright, but this will be their first real test on if it works or not. Has the team properly adjusted yet, and is making one swap a tank even enough to improve their results? It all kind of smells fishy to me. And in general, I feel like the Reign are starting to make some progress in a positive direction. Win or loss, they are figuring things out. Speedily and Vigilante are still relatively new additions to the starting lineup, and I think as these weeks fly on by, they'll continue to get better and better. Plus, they need this win a lot more than the Glads, and LA do feel a little checked out at the moment, so give me the Atlanta Reign in a 3-2 win. If there's one thing the Reign have made a habit of doing so far this year, it's coming up big right as the tournament rolls around. This is their time to shine. It's when they play at their absolute best. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Next is Paris and New York. A pretty irrelevant game in the grand scheme of it. Neither of them are making the tournament, and they both stink. I'm not trying to sound harsh, that's kind of just the truth right now. Is there a team to dislike more in this matchup though? Yeah, I'd say so, because the Paris Eternal literally have not won a map this stage, and they've had a new roster for like 2 weeks. It takes time to build up your trust and your synergy, especially when the game is the most team-oriented it has been arguably in years. The NYXL might be struggling, but they do have the basics down. It hasn't really shown lately due to their inconsistent nature, but you'd have to imagine that it does come up against the Paris Eternal. That basic teamwork diff will net them a 4-map victory. Additionally, New York has the only superstar X factor in the lobby thanks to Yaki. Paris don't really have an answer for him, and I think that with New York's follow-up being cleaner, they should have this in the bag. Next we have a potential banger when the Fuel try their luck against the Shock. This is easily one of the most anticipated matchups of the week. They've been two of the best teams in the Junker Queen meta, no contest. The heavily favored Shock are definitely on a roll right now, but they're very much overdue for a loss. In theory, the Fuel have the right pieces and the mindset to make this happen. Their synergy and coaching is top of the line, and we know that they have what it takes to hit that go button and constantly keep up with somebody of the Shock's caliber. And it's not like they don't have the playmakers. If anyone can put a halt to Proper's Rampage, it's going to be Sparkle and a Genji meta. And think about how good Hanbin has been. He could definitely keep up with Kaluj. This could really be a moment where the Shock end up faltering out of nowhere. But right now, San Francisco kind of have this magic to them. They've shown very little weakness. It's really hard to go against them when they're riding such a high, especially when people aside from Proper are also playing at a superstar level. While I do believe the Shock end up sweating here, I think they're going to win 3-2. As good as Dallas have been, there have been a lot of individual games where these minor holes have shown up, and the Shock have only gotten better over time, so I trust them more not to show their cracks. It's too risky to go against them when they're this hot, especially when Proper might end up outdueling the Fuel's biggest asset. Transitioning to Spark versus Charge, we have another one of those mixed roster versus mixed roster situations. It's two teams going head to head who maybe could end up making those communication errors from time to time, and you kind of just have to think about it like this in this situation. Who is less likely to make those types of major mistakes? If we're basing that assumption off the season as a whole, and who has looked better, the Spark are superior without question. And that's generally why I do think they're going to take the series 3-1, but I will say, there's a lot of room for things to go wrong. The Charge don't match up horribly at all. The support lines may be a lot closer than we think, and if Jimmy can have another great game, it just might be enough to equalize the DPS battle. Guangzhou are not to be underestimated. The Spark aren't exactly feeling all that confident right now, so anything is possible. But the Spark are the more consistent option. They technically still do have a chance to make the tournament, and they have a bit more star power thanks to Shy, so I'm going to say they stay in control. Now for the Hunters and Valiant. As I mentioned earlier, Chengdu have shown a tendency to take advantage of those opponents who aren't that sure of themselves. Their big L's came against the best teams. Everybody else has kind of just been a breeze for them, and the Valiant happened to fall into category number 2. The Hunters are preferred in a lot of different areas. If the Valiant wanted to win this game, both the DPS and support lines would have to step up big time, and to me that's just too much of an ask in their current state, so my pred will be a Chengdu 3-1 victory. I need more out of Sashin and Langsa, man. An inexperienced support line is playing one that has been together for a long time. Something like that means everything in a deathball comp like this, and in general, EasyHunt and Becky definitely fall behind Jinmu and leave. Don't hold your breath for a good game. The Valiant have so much to prove. Ending the East on Saturday will be the Seoul Dynasty versus the Philadelphia Fusion. The random upset potential is definitely present again. I mean, we saw Philly destroy Seoul in a similar scenario in the previous stage. They were heavy underdogs against a red-hot Seoul team, but they murdered them. I don't really see that playing out again though, as this time there is no MN3 to carry them. He's going to be on the bench again most likely, so he won't be able to destroy on Widow and Ashe and all of that stuff. Philly kind of ride and die by him, and as a result, their play has been kind of lackluster. Philly are more of an individual carry-oriented roster. Meanwhile, Seoul absolutely thrive from this type of specific meta where you get to play as a unit, so Seoul are going to be favored 9 times out of 10. I have them winning 3-0. It's not going to be like last time. I refuse to believe that. If Seoul get upset by Philly a second time, with all of these circumstances, I will lose my mind. The Florida Mayhem versus the Paris Eternal kick us off on Saturday afternoon, and it's the same deal as Paris versus New York. This team is still so darn new. It's hard to deem them trustworthy against all these rosters who have been together for like half a year now. It's just unrealistic to expect a close game, especially when the Mayhem desperately need this win. They still have a chance to qualify for Toronto. It's an opportunity they cannot waste. It's an easy chance to get a win and a +3 to their map differential. I'm still a little worried about their support situation and some other things going on, but they're so far ahead when it comes to experience and synergy, and they're showing some interesting game plans recently, so you'd have to like them a lot more. And at least in my book, I'd say that Checkmate, Exe, and Hydron are all kind of overdue for a big game that leads to a win, so the Mayhem for me take this 3-0. The Eternal don't get any trust yet. They just gotta go through the simple motions of being a team first. It's a very sudden change that will require time. If they even come close to winning a game this weekend, that would be very impressive. Now for the Justice and Outlaws game, which I will also be considering a key match of this week. This is a big game for the simple fact that it's must win for the Outlaws. If they lose, the door technically opens up for them to miss the cut for this tournament. And also, Houston are doing really good in the overall standings in terms of playoff positioning, and they desperately need some tournament bonus points to ensure that they continue to be in that top 4 spot. The problem is, this game feels strangely up in the air. Houston are the better team for sure, but everything feels very weird right now with all of these mid-level teams. The Justice beat the Spitfire, who also beat the Outlaws, so does that mean the Justice are technically better than Houston? I don't really know. My point is, most of these mid teams can beat each other on any given day. We've seen it a lot so far. So if you think the Outlaws have a guaranteed win, I would think very carefully. alexyOWL statistically has actually been the most productive Junker Queen in the Overwatch League, and the tandem of Decay and Assassin has looked really good. And because the Justice have zero expectations after all of the drama, they're practically playing pressure-free Overwatch. Everything is going to be on the Outlaws to show up. However, I do believe that the Outlaws have a lot of good takeaways from the previous week. They looked a lot better against the Rain, and likely are going to have a better strategy to implement than what London showed us against the Justice. If they can contest Decay like Vancouver did, they're going to be okay. And that's something I know they can do, so to me the Outlaws win in a close 3-1. I have a lot of confidence in Pelican to be that disruptor and X-factor the Outlaws need to slow down Decay. I have a lot of confidence in their support line as well to gain that slight edge, so they're going to have all they really need to put the pieces together. As long as they synergize right and they get Pelican going early, they're going to have it in the bag. But if I'm wrong, don't be surprised if they lose. That's all I'm saying. Concluding Saturday is the Vancouver Titans taking on the Boston Uprising. God, I'm still not used to saying this, but the Titans are 1000% favored. Their momentum came to a stop against Houston last week, but that's totally okay. We're not expecting them to take down these high-level teams, but it just so happens that Boston in their current state are quite the opposite. If anything, I'd say Boston are a step or two behind Vancouver. For some reason, this team cannot win without Punk, and that's a problem because it's obvious that their new vision includes Mag as the starter in a totally Korean lineup, unless they decided now that Coach Laurie is gone that that's going to change. It just feels so weird to say this, but the Uprising are lacking that same direction and vision that Vancouver has. The Titans have killed opponents who are lost this stage, and the fact that they beat the Justice has us all feeling pretty good about them. The team will follow their Junker Queen more efficiently than Boston as they pull off a 3-1. If the Titans win, they automatically make this tournament, so this is a huge matchup for them. They've had no success all year, and I think it's time to change that. The Philadelphia Fusion versus the Hangzhou Spark is up next. This is borderline coin toss territory. Two teams that are riding a very weird low point are going head to head. Who do you even trust more in this situation? The Fusion for having more map wins, or the Spark for only struggling big time against those top-notch opponents? And it doesn't help that this rivalry is so unpredictable. Ah man, I'm at a loss for words. It could blind me, but Philly's loss to Guangzhou really gets under my skin. My thoughts from their other matchup comes into effect here. The lack of MN3 has everything all out of whack. They need him and Zest to be a 1-2 punch. As much as I love Carpe, he doesn't quite compare to Shy on the Sojourn role. We've seen what happens when nasty Sojourn players are left unpressured. It's a problem. And due to the simple fact that I don't really like how Philly play around Fury in this meta, I'd say the Spark have enough leverage to edge out a 3-2. There's not much confidence in this answer though, let that be known. For all I know, the Spark are in way worse shape, and this was just a hiccup for Philly. But so far, this rivalry has been back and forth, and technically it's the Spark's turn to win, so let's give it to them. Not for probably the other huge game of this week. The hottest teams in APAC are about to clash head-to-head, with the winner likely having a 6-0 stage. I've been waiting for this one. Shanghai and Seoul have easily been the top two teams in their region this tournament, and I'm curious to see if either one of them are in a tier of their own. If we go off their historic rivalry, the answer to that is likely no. Most people's expectations is going to be a close game, but in terms of who wins, it truly could go either way. Their performances this stage have practically been identical. Seoul are overdue for a loss against Shanghai, but at the same time, they're probably still favored. You know why that is? And that, my friends, at least in my books, is the support line. In particular, I believe that Seoul's key to success in this game lies within Prophet. He has a lot of experience on Brigitte, more than Izayaki, and I see that being very beneficial for Seoul. If Prophet gets a bit more value out of Inspire and taking the charge head on, that could be just enough to push them over the Dragons. That is my theory at least, because they are ridiculously close in all other aspects. Strategy and someone having an off day really could be the difference maker in this situation. And based on the season and how it's progressed so far, Shanghai feel like the more likely team to fall victim to this. I feel like I'm making a mistake because the third time's the charm matchup usually come back to bite me, but I'm rolling with Seoul in a 5-map thriller. I like the cohesion they show in this type of meta. It plays up to a lot of their strengths, and I have confidence in them because of it. And while I do for the Dragons as well, it's ever so slightly less since it doesn't play up to their backline's full potential. No matter the result, this has the making of a great game written all over it, and I truly hope that it delivers. Time to end the weekend with some Sunday games in NA, and first we have the London Spitfire and the Toronto Defiant. The Defiant are already locked in for their homestand, but technically have a chance to get second place if Dallas plays poorly against San Francisco. On the other side of the coin, and why I consider this to be a key match of the week, we have London desperately fighting for their tournament lives. If they fail to make the Summer Showdown, there is a possibility that multiple teams are going to surpass them in the standings. Things could quickly escalate to the danger zone if they fail. Will that sense of urgency be enough to push them over the Defiant? I'm not entirely sure. London have had a lot of weird ups and downs this stage. It's very hard to get a read on them. They really should have won that Washington game. It's crazy that they choked that. They have all sorts of question marks regarding their adaptability right now, and the fact that their level of success depends on the week makes them a huge gamble. And as last week showed us, they're maybe a little confused as there's a lot of experimentation going on. That Mei strat was not it. And in general, the DPS maybe felt a bit shakier than usual. Their confidence is starting to waver from time to time. They clearly are not incredibly comfortable with the current meta, and that is a problem in a do-or-die situation. Toronto has been extremely consistent this stage. Everybody's doing their thing right now, especially that DPS line. And if the DPS are rolling, they're in great shape. That's when games go from 50-50 to 75-25, in theory at least. Honestly, I see the success continuing with how they're doing right now. Toronto take the series 3-1, as London feel too conflicted. Backbone and Sparker have found less success as of late, and that's a problem when considering how good Hisu and Although have looked. The only possible way that London saves this is with a breakout day from their star DPS and Landon finding ways to outposition Twilight. And unfortunately, that asking price may be a little too much. Ending the week is the Mayhem versus the NYXL. The Mayhem truly lucked out here. This week offers a huge opportunity to jump right back into tournament contention. If they beat Paris and New York convincingly, all they need is one of many possible teams to screw up and they're in business. They're slowly but surely putting this together. I have a lot of confidence in them to get this done and be clutch when they need to. You can see all of the strategy and the synergy starting to bloom a bit more, especially in that Dallas game. There's a few questions here and there still, of course, but in general they feel a lot more situated. And compare that to New York's game plan, which is basically Yaki or bust. I need somebody like Flora, for example, to have a really good game, or maybe one of the supports. And in their current condition, that doesn't feel like a possibility. Florida are probably going to win this in a 3-0, as it's just a pure team diff. Florida always seem to wake up right around this time. They're starting to ride a little bit of momentum, and I'd like to think that trend is going to continue here as they further situate their lineup even more. But that's basically everything I have to say with Florida versus New York. It seems pretty straightforward, so let's take a quick look at how the Summer Showdown qualifiers will turn out and who makes it to Toronto / the tournament in general next week. Starting with the West, if my predictions come true, Vancouver, Houston, and Atlanta will all end up qualifying. Then you have the London Spitfire get kicked out in favor of the Florida Mayhem, as they just don't do enough and Florida takes advantage of their easy week. And over in the East, as Seoul and Shanghai have already qualified, you'll see Chengdu end up joining them, and then Guangzhou, with a maybe not as good week, end up falling out in favor of the Spark, who get hot right at the perfect time. Everybody else will end up watching from home, but maybe I'm wrong, we'll have to see. Anything's possible. I can't wait to see what happens, and I'm sure you guys are excited too. And if you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more content just like this here on the channel, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And as always, I wanted to thank all of you so much for watching this content. I appreciate you all so much, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.